The content presented in this podcast and YouTube show is for informational and entertainment purposes only. It is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the guidance of your physician or other qualified healthcare provider with any questions you may have regarding your health or a medical condition. Never disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking it because of something you have heard or seen on this show. If you think you may have a medical emergency, call your doctor or emergency services immediately. The host, guest, and producers of this show are not responsible for any adverse effects resulting from your use of or reliance on any information presented.
Andrea, can you hear us?
Many years ago, I died for 26 seconds. There are so many people in this world that have experienced life events that have led to their soul purpose. Wake Up Your Soul with Andrea will bring you these significant life events that demonstrate how to use those moments for guidance and life purpose. These are our stories. Hi, everyone, and welcome to Wake Up Your Soul with Andrea Lynn. Today's guest is Kevin Palmier, and he's here to share with us how he found that rock bottom has a basement, and he's going to share with us how he got out of that. Let's welcome Kevin.
Hello, my friend.
Hi, how are you?
I am living the dream. Thank you so very much for having me. I'm excited to chat.
Yeah, living the dream sounds better than being in a basement of rock bottom.
Yes. And oftentimes when I say living the dream, people question it. It's like, well, whose dream is it? Again, I'm not saying the dream doesn't have nightmares, but this is the better alternative for sure, I would say.
But that's such a good point because everybody has a different dream.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't recognize that so often. It's like, well, that's your dream. And it's really important that we figure out like, what is our personal dream and how can we achieve that? So what was your personal dream?
When I was very little, I had a bunch of strange personal dreams, like to be a professional wrestler, and I wanted to be a stuntman. And for a while, I wanted to fight professionally. I wanted to be a professional mixed martial arts fighter. Those were my dreams. And then later in life, I had the dream of being a full-time podcaster. And luckily, I get to do that today. But it has taken a lot out of me to get to where I am today. So I've had a lot of different dreams, but this is the one that I'm most grateful that I chased for sure.
So you were into the martial arts, and is that what led you to, you were telling me you were into bodybuilding?
Yeah.
Okay. So that was kind of your so obviously you're a podcaster now, but previously share with us what your life looked like previously and how you found that rock bottom has a basement.
So I was raised by my mom and my grandmother. I didn't know my dad. I didn't meet my dad until I was 27. And we grew up lower middle class, not a lot of opportunity. My family didn't value education. So I knew pretty early in life that college was just not going to be the thing for me.
Okay.
And nobody in my family had gone to college, so I didn't really have a blueprint of how to get there. And I didn't really have anybody in my family who could help me do it. So,
was that traumatizing to you though? Like, was that emotionally bothersome to you that you felt like it's just not in the cards for me? Or was it something like, that's okay, I'm just going to figure out my plan?
I think I've always, and this is a dangerous game, but I kind of found significance in going in the opposite direction of what other people were doing. I don't know where that came from. So I think I was naive to the fact that college was actually valuable. That was part one. And then part two, I think to your point, I assumed I would figure it out in some way, shape, or form. I just didn't really know how.
Okay.
But I liked doing things in ways that other people weren't doing them. And I remember thinking that most of these kids are going to college because their parents are making them. Mm-hmm. That's why they're going. Will it be better for them in the long run? Very possibly. But I didn't have anybody forcing me to go. So I felt like I had the freedom to experience life and test what I wanted to do.
So yeah, the question is more so like, how did you feel about that though? Did you feel okay about that? Do you think that created some emotional turmoil?
No, I felt good about it. Yeah, I felt good. I think I was just naive to what college was.
Mm-hmm.
right? So there was no part of me that was like, okay, this is going to be a mistake eventually,
Yeah.
or I feel less than because I don't have the same opportunity. I think for me at that point in my life, my identity was I'm the kid who came from the broken home. I'm the fatherless kid. And that was my identity. So I think it was just like, yeah, this is kind of normal. This feels normal based on what my experience has been so far.
So I really believe our childhood and all the things we go through really shape who we are. Can you talk a little bit about growing up without a father?
The first time I ever really remember it affecting me, I think I was in middle school.
Okay.
And for some reason, Andrea, you go around the class and you introduce yourself and you say what your parents do for a living. It's like strange. That's a strange introduction. Like I could tell you my favorite color or something. That might be the way to go here. And I remember saying, my name is Kevin. My mom is in the medical field. And then I was like, oh no, I don't even know what my dad does. And my dad is in construction. I just made that up. And I think he ended up being in construction. So it worked out. That was really hard because my biggest fear was that people were going to find out that I didn't have two parents. That was a big one. And the thing that I talk about often that I've had other people reach out and say, yeah, no, my experience was very similar. Strangely enough, most of the friends that I had when I was younger, their families tried to like semi-adopt me. And all I mean by that is they would invite me over for dinner. We'd have sleepovers. I think they were trying to make my life as normal as possible based on the fact that it was not going in a normal direction. But again, outside of that, I was insecure for sure.
Yeah.
I never got bullied about it. That was never really a thing. I think I just got so used to this is my normal / I'll have somewhat of an ego to protect myself so I won't have to look at the truth that I never, until later in life, I never got to the place where I fully had self-awareness of how much it impacted me. So when I was younger, I didn't realize the roots that it was creating until I was more self-aware later in life.
Yeah, so I'm imagining, I mean, it kind of sounds like you were learning to put up a front a little bit at times.
Yeah.
My life is normal, and yeah, I've got a dad in construction, sure.
Yeah.
So a little bit of lying, I guess, kind of started to creep in.
I would say some fibbing. Yeah, there was some fibbing and some character building and some ego protecting for sure. Yeah, it was. I just didn't. As much as I enjoyed being different, I wanted to be different in my own way, by my own choosing, not circumstantially.
Right.
And I was just so afraid that people were going to look at me differently. And I always had that when somebody would find out, they'd be like, oh, I'm sorry. It's like, well, there's nothing, you don't have to be sorry for anything. It's not like I woke up one day and he was gone. He was never there. So it's different. So I also
That's all you knew.
It's all I knew. I didn't want sympathy. I didn't really want people to treat me differently. And again, I also understand in the grand scheme of things how much of a privileged problem this is to have compared to many of the problems out there for sure.
Yeah. But such a strange thing for a child because, like you're saying, that's all you knew. But others, they knew differently. So then they had all this sympathy for you. And that's probably really confusing as a child because you're like, why does everybody feel so bad for me? This is like, what? Because you just didn't know any different.
Well, the other awareness that I have now is I wonder if I was better off not having him around than having a toxic father around. And it's very easy to recognize the lack of something. So it's like mom, dad, mom, grandmother, no dad. Okay. At the time, it was very hard to understand your father is an alcoholic. Your mother is into drugs. Your father is somewhat abusive. At the time, you don't recognize that because you don't see behind the curtain. Right. But everybody could see that only mom came to the baseball games. That was very easy to recognize. So I think so much of what I was dealing with at the time, other people ended up dealing with later in life because so much of their experience was behind the scenes and nobody else would ever see that. It's very easy to recognize I only had my mom there, but you don't know what's going on behind the scenes. So that was another interesting thing in reflection.
Yeah. Well, and for everybody though, we have the viewpoint of a child when we are a child. We can't understand, like you're saying, behind the scenes, behind the curtain. We can't really understand why anybody's doing what they're doing, why our moms are making the choices they're making, or why our dads are making the choices they're making, or why they're in the picture or not in the picture. And like you're saying, you probably were better off that he wasn't around, because, you know, what would I rather have? Somebody that's emotionally abusive in my life, or just not at all? And then figuring out, how can I love myself? I think I'd rather figure out how to love myself than how to support myself and like build myself back up from being beaten down every day emotionally by somebody that's an alcoholic. Or, I mean, it could have been physical. Like there's always going to be traumas that come at us from some direction. And whether it's worse or not one way, I mean, that's on you, I guess, to figure out and decide. But clearly you're working through it all. Forever
and always. I will be, I'm the most healed I've ever been, but there's a long way to go, and there always will be, for sure.
Because as things come up, right, in life, certain situations, then it's like you reflect again on something from your childhood, and and then it's like, oh, I guess I got to deal with that now.
I've realized, I mean, to this day, one of the things I'm working through is I have a giant fear of disappointing men. Giant. It's giant. If
that makes sense,
right? But it's like, that's the next thing to work through for me, because it's affecting me. Yeah, it's affecting me way more than I'd like to admit. Still, to this day, as somebody who has been doing this a long time and has worked with so many people, that's currently my kryptonite to this day.
I mean, I would say, from the perspective of healing, you got to look at why. Like, you clearly, if you're hanging on to that belief, you think there's more benefits than drawbacks in that, right? Like, you think that by getting men to love you, I mean, I know what you mean, but like by having validation from men, like it's filling you in some way. Like, why do you need that? Why do you believe that's better than not having them give a crap? And so you have to find that balance. So obviously you got to look at the drawbacks in it versus all the benefits. Because right now you're believing, well, there's so many benefits if I can get like the support of other men in my life. Like, if I can get validation from them, this is good. This is good. But like, why is it also a bad thing? And when you can look at that, you can create that balance in your brain instead of having it like this.
I fawn with men. So if we're talking about the trauma responses, fight, flight, freeze, fawn, I fawn. It's not the same. It's like I'll play a part for someone to get love. But it only happens with men. I don't do that with women. That's not the way it works for me, right? I was raised by my mom and my grandmother, so I get so much love. I get so much love from women. So
you're like, I don't have to do anything. I know you'll love me. I'm used to this.
Right. But even to your point, like, there's stuff underneath that you can take too far. There's a lot of benefits, but there's a lot of detriments. One of the best things that ever happened was I saw my dad when I was 27.
Okay.
And when I saw him, so quick context, I was sitting on the couch one day. I was going through my Facebook messages, and I didn't realize that there was a folder for messages that got sent to you by people that you weren't friends with.
Okay.
So I'm going through there. I was lonely, so who knows what I was doing. Probably not the most savory things at the time, probably. But I remember seeing a message that said, "Hey, Kevin, I'm blank. I'm your father's girlfriend." And it was from 3 years earlier, Andrea.
Wow.
So I took my phone and I hot potatoed that on the floor, and I said, we are not going to do this today. It's Saturday. Absolutely not. But I was so curious, like, oh, interesting. I never thought this was going to happen. So I opened it up. Hey, Kevin, I'm blank. I'm your father's girlfriend. He's seen you on Facebook, and it looks like you're doing really well. And if you would ever want the opportunity to meet, he would love that. And I remember this time I hot potatoed myself on the floor. I fell on the floor. I started bawling my eyes out because there was just so much there. There was so much inside of me. And I messaged one of my friends. And I said, hey, and they knew my story. I said, hey, my dad messaged me and he wants to meet up. And they said, are you going to do it? And I said, I think I have to. I think this is like one of those things.
Always going to wonder if you don't.
Yeah, this is like one of those boys to men moments. I think I'm supposed to do this. I don't want to do it, but I think I'm supposed to.
Yeah.
And they said, do you want me to come with you? And I said, no, I think this is something I have to do by myself, unfortunately. Yes, of course I want you to come with me, but I need to do this by myself. So I messaged back. I said, yeah, let's meet up. next week or whenever it was. We met up at the halfway point between where we lived. And it was at this little diner that's connected to a car dealership. Strange thing. But I remember I got there and I went inside and I sat down and I had maybe the most humbling moment ever of all time of, I don't know what my dad looks like. So when he gets here, I'm not going to know. He's going to have to find me, and this is going to be maybe more awkward than I thought it was going to be in the first place.
Yeah.
I was sitting at a booth facing the window and I saw this guy walk by, and just energetically, I was like, okay, that's him. I can tell. I don't know if you ever get this, when there's like a level of familiarity, you get like a ringing in your ears. Does that ever happen to you?
No.
I don't know if that's a me thing. I had that. It was like my ears were ringing. It's like, oh, okay. Yeah, it's like a vibration thing. I don't know. It sounds...
my ears ring sometimes, but I'm going to pay attention now because I've never correlated it to anything.
I had that moment. I was like, okay, that's my dad. That's okay, cool. So he came in, he found me, he sat down. It was about as awkward as you can imagine. I mean, we're 27 years of catch up here in 27 minutes. I was super emotionally cut off, stoic. You're not going to get anything from me. You can cry all you want. You're not going to get anything from me. And at one point he was crying and apologizing. And then we got into it. We got into like a conversation. It was good. It was constructive. And I had a moment where I was looking across the table at him and I felt so bad for him. He did not make good decisions. His life did not turn out where he thought it was going to. And I had done more work on myself in my 27 years of life than he had done. I probably had done more work that year than he did his whole life, probably at that point. So one, I had a ton of empathy. The second thing was I had a ton of forgiveness. I don't think he woke up one day and said, I'm going to try to find a way to screw this kid's life up. I don't think that's what happened. I think life is hard as heck, and he was going through his own experience, and he didn't handle it in the way that I like to think I would have. And then the third thing, and this was going back to what we were talking about earlier, I realized that I had given him, somebody who is incapable of handling it, the power to affect my life in so many ways. He's not capable of harnessing and using that power. I gave him so much influence in my life when he didn't deserve to have it. And I left that day with forgiveness. I left that day with empathy. I left that day with understanding. Ended up seeing him a couple times after that. And then it got to the point where he would just call me randomly, and then he would get mad when I didn't answer because I'm doing stuff like this. I can't answer the phone. Pops, I'm doing stuff. I run a business. It's not that easy. And he would get frustrated when I didn't want to see him. And eventually it got to the point where I posted a picture of my wife and I on Facebook, and he commented. And all he said was, you have to lose that mustache. That was all he said. You got to get rid of that mustache. And I remember that day it was like, all right, this is done. So I let it die from there. And he's just never, I'm not willing to do the amount of work necessary for us to have a successful relationship. I don't want to lead him on. That's a big piece of it too. And going back to what we said, that allowed me to start the process of healing in so many different ways. I don't need to continue chasing that. I think I got what I needed. I think I got what I was going to get out of that. And now I can do the work on my own. But I think it's a privilege. It's a privilege that I got the opportunity to see something that had played such a big role invisibly in my life for 27 years at that point.
Well, absolutely. But I think it's really interesting when you say you weren't willing to do the work. Like, I don't know if that's even the case, right? It's like, you clearly are somebody willing to put in the work, but I think you just had so much self-awareness and ability to recognize like this is not a beneficial relationship because it is not balanced and it's very unfair and it's unequal. I think you're healthier than maybe you even realize or were in that moment, because it was just like, I wasn't willing. I'm not willing to put in the work. No, like I'm always willing personally, because I've been in these situations too with people, not a parent, but certainly friendships and people that have come and gone in my life. And I've just gotten to the point where it's like, you know what, like I deserve better. Like I recognize who I am and what I will put in. And I know I will put in all the effort in the world if you do the same. But I don't believe somebody is worth all my time and all my energy if they give nothing back.
Yeah.
And it sounds like not only did he give nothing back, what he did give back was just hurtful.
Unsolicited feedback on my mustache? How dare
Yeah.
you? How dare you?
Yeah.
Well, you said the word there that I think is so important. Well, 2 words, worth it. I think when I say I wasn't willing to do the work, that's what I'm saying is to me, it wasn't worth it to go through whatever amount of work it would take to have a relationship that I don't think it's ever going to be what he wants.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I desire to even have one.
But it's not even like, it's not even work you could do. You could do work for yourself, but like, it wasn't even on you. He's the one that needs to do all the work, right? Like you're the one putting in the time and the effort and the energy. But if he's delivering nothing, like what work do you even have to do? Like you've done the work and it's not reciprocated. And I think that's where like we just have this self-awareness of how a relationship is benefiting us or hurting us. And when it's hurting us, it isn't necessarily on us to fix. Now, occasionally, like we play a part in that, right? And I'm not saying you shouldn't reflect on that. You absolutely should reflect on like, what part are you playing in this? But for you, it's like, well, what part did you play in him, like giving you this unsolicited feedback?
Yeah. I tend to take a lot of ownership, which is good / not always good, depending on the situation. I think it was the thought process of if this relationship is going to work, it will be through my leadership. That's the only way this is going to work.
Yeah.
And am I willing to lead this person? No.
But you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink.
That would true.
And that would have been the situation most likely, right? You're putting in all this effort and you're trying to lead and trying to guide them. But I always say too, it's kind of like a homeless person where it's like they might really need help, but if they don't want it, it's not going to be received and they won't go anywhere with it. So they have to want the guidance and want the help, and obviously didn't. But so back to your story. So you dismiss your father, I guess, basically from your life.
Yep, that happened.
Yeah. Okay. Yep. And then at what point are we at now where you start getting into the bodybuilding or?
So that was post bodybuilding. So
okay,
that was a very weird time in my life because I had a lot of opportunity for growth. So the year before that, I was however old, 26, 25. My girlfriend at the time was a model. So again, that's what I wanted when I was a kid. I assume that's going to fix a lot of my problems. Like that's one, cool. I was getting ready to compete in a bodybuilding show. So I was quite literally in the best shape I will ever be. I will never be in that shape again. High paying job. I had a nice car, new apartment, great friends, all the stuff. And this was like the arc of, I never thought I was going to be successful. I was the gas station guy. I had worked all these dead end jobs. Somehow I've achieved external success. Why am I so miserable? Why am I so unfulfilled? Why am I so insecure? Why am I afraid of my own shadow? So from the outside looking in, I was crushing it. Internally, I was so miserable. So I finished my bodybuilding show, definitely developed an eating disorder, which I was not aware was going to happen, of course. Girlfriend at the time sits me down at the kitchen table one day and says, "Hey, I'm leaving. I don't feel like you're as supportive as I need in a partner when it comes to chasing my dreams and my goals." She had very big goals and very big aspirations, and I was unable to support her in those because I was unable to support myself. And she said something to me that really helped me understand, unfortunately, where I was. She said, "I was going to tell you a month ago, but I was afraid you might kill yourself." And I remember thinking, oh my goodness, how did we get here? How did we get here? How did this fall so far so fast without me realizing it? So she left. My job that paid so well slowed down. So my bills doubled and now I'm struggling for money. And my landlord comes to me one day and he says, "I'm going to take your ex-girlfriend to court because her name is on the lease and I can do that." And I said, "Do not do that. I will find a way to make this work. Just trust me. I will find a way to make this work." So I fell into, well, I make money. I need to make as much money as humanly possible. That's what I need to do. That'll fix all my problems. Here we go. So I got a promotion at my job. The next year was the craziest year ever for the company. I spent 10 months living on the road because all of our contracts were in other states. I was in construction. It's the easiest way to explain it.
Okay.
We get to the end of the year. I have my final pay stub in hand, and I'm like, okay, I wanted to make $100,000 this year, right? I'm going to do it. I did it. I opened my pay stub, and I did. I made $100,000 at 26 with no college degree, but nothing internally changed. If anything, I was more insecure. Mm-hmm. I was less confident. I was self-conscious, still afraid of my own shadow. I had this moment where I realized that for most of my life, I'd lived unconsciously. I have jumped from one place to another. I don't know why I do any of the things I do. The opposite of unconscious is hyperconscious. So I did what any middle-aged man would do. I started a podcast all about being hyperconscious. That was what I wanted to do. Yeah, that's what I'm going to do. And I fell in love with podcasting. But as you know, Andrea, in the beginning, there's not a line out the door of people saying, this is a great idea. How much money do you need? Like, how much should I cut the check for? That's not real. It doesn't work that way. Yeah. So I had to keep going to this job that I just hated now. The job was there to make good money. I don't like this job. I just will suck it up to make money. So I start calling out of work. I start leaving job sites early, showing up late. I did a lot of traveling that year, and every time I'd be packing my suitcase to leave for the week, I would be so homesick. I was so depressed. I was so anxious. So this all eventually led to, I was in New Jersey for a job, and I lived in New Hampshire, so it was like 6 hours away. I woke up in a hotel room, sat up, slid to the edge of the bed. I was lacing up my work boots. And the best way to explain it was there was 10 televisions on in my head at the same time, and every single one was on a different station. One is saying, you're stuck here forever. Kev, you got so lucky to get this job. Like, you're never, ever, ever going to get an opportunity like this. Do not screw this up. If you ever did leave, what would your friends say? You make more money than any of your friends. Like, there's something to that. It feels good. What would your family say? You make more money than anybody in your family ever has. And the loudest voice, and the one that made the most sense logically, was, are you going to be a podcaster? We're going to go all in on the podcast? That's what we're going to do here? That doesn't seem very realistic. And it was in that moment where I found out that rock bottom has a basement. I thought to myself, well, if I was just to take my life, I would take all my problems with me. And I'm 6 hours away from anybody in the world who cares about me. I don't think I can do any of this stuff, and I don't think I'm ever going to be successful again. Mm-hmm. Luckily, I had a really good friend who I reached out to. And he's now my business partner, and we've recorded 2,000 podcast episodes together, so it's worked really well. And I explained to him what I was going through. I explained to him what I was feeling, and he gave me a new perspective. He gave me new opportunities. He gave me a brighter light at the end of the tunnel. Ended up working that job for 2 or 3 more months and then leaving. And then him and I partnered up to do this wild, insane, crazy podcast thing that I never thought would work. And that was in 2018. And we've been doing it full time ever since 2018.
That's really awesome. I want to ask you, though, how you made this shift from being so unconscious with your life to being more conscious. I mean, I know you're kind of talking about it, but was there something very specific that you did to kind of get that awakening? Or was it just that moment of the 10 TVs going off where you're just like, okay, it's clear now?
I'm not proud to say this now as much, but I was listening to a ton of Joe Rogan back then. And I remember he was having a conversation with somebody named Duncan Trussell. And they were talking about how weird is it that so many of us, like the vast majority of us, go to a job that we hate every day. Mm-hmm. And I remember thinking like, ooh, that's some next level thinking that I know that, but like, why doesn't anybody talk about that? Interesting. Yeah. That was like the first thing for me is I started questioning why my normal was my normal. Mm-hmm. That was a really big thing. And then I remember I had this understanding of the things that I'm afraid of, I essentially have formed an agreement with that I will never do. Mm. And that is limiting me from so many opportunities. Like I was afraid to fly. I still am. I was terrified of flying. And it was like, so I'll just never go anywhere for forever. I'll never go anywhere. I don't know if I'm okay with that. Mm-hmm. So I think it was an influx of content that I would say that was hinging on philosophical. And then I was asking myself a lot of like weird questions of like, why am I afraid of this? I would just ask why about everything. Why? Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then that led to me really focusing on chasing certain fears and like facing those fears, understanding that it didn't kill me, and then asking why again. So yeah, it was a mixture of all of that. And my business partner has been a great mentor. So I had somebody in my life saying like, Kev, you're better than you think, man. Like, no, I know what you think, but you don't know what I think. That's been very, very helpful for me as well.
Yeah. Well, and I think seeing how helpful somebody can be, like your business partner, can also make you feel like that's what I'm offering the world as well through podcasting, right? Like you're doing what he has done for you, but you're doing it for others in that same way. I want to just talk about the depression a little bit because I relate to it so much. And I know so many others. I definitely at so many points in my life have been very suicidally depressed and had those same thoughts where, yeah, if I just, do this, like it's over. I won't have to feel this way anymore. Like I don't have to wake up every day and hurt so bad. And you get to a point though, where you have to really think, why am I hurting so bad? And is there really nothing I can do about it? And, I really believed for so long there was nothing I could do about it. But then I also had to stop and be real and look at how many people are walking this world so happy and enjoying life. So I realized there must be something I am doing wrong in my life because there's obviously a way to do it differently. And so I had to figure out like, what are they doing? But I mean, that required a therapist. And then, coming to this realization, kind of like you're saying through a lot of this stuff where you start realizing the things that you're telling yourself are not good. They're not kind. And that's really what's putting you in this bad emotional state. And I mean, like you, here I am now doing podcasting and YouTube and everything. And it's going so much better than I ever imagined. But for a long time, I mean, pretty much my whole life, I've always felt I was born to be vocal. I've always been very outspoken, but I've gone through a lot of stuff, physically, mentally, all the things, a ton of various health problems. You probably haven't heard all these stories, but my pacemaker wire went through my heart into my lung. And the fact that I had to get a pacemaker at 21 years old, my heart was stopping over and over. And I got diagnosed with problem after problem, and then even told it looked like ALS. And at that point, it's like, hey, you're just going to die. And so I had to find my own way. But I've always had to like dig down really deep and just figure stuff out. And I feel like it's really important for everyone to look at their lives and look at all the really hard stuff and figure out, how has that happened for a reason? Because for me, I really do believe all these things have happened so that I can be here today doing my podcast and doing YouTube and connecting with people on a level that I wouldn't be able to connect if I hadn't gone through all that. And so when you can understand that all of these things have just benefited you and put you in the most opportune place that you could be, then everything kind of starts to fade away and not feel like so much of a problem.
Yeah. One of the most interesting things, oftentimes people will say, what have you learned from the podcast? When we first started the podcast, we would interview these amazing people who had these stories that just blew you away. And I remember after the first couple, I said, whoa, what an incredible story of facing, overcoming, and then using adversity. We'll probably never hear anything like that again. Next week, same thing. Same unique version of that.
Yeah.
And to your point, I think if you have the right understanding and maybe the right attributes, I don't know exactly what it is, you can use your adversity as an advantage, but I think it requires self-belief. I think community helps a ton, and self-awareness, because we can look, what's the difference between two kids who go through the same childhood? One harnesses it for the best stuff and somebody becomes a victim of something else. But I think that's, your adversity can definitely become your advantage if you know how to leverage it that way. And it's also really easy for me to talk about the stuff now that I've made it through, quote unquote, right? Like if I started this podcast and then I fell flat on my face and I had to go back and get a job that I hated, I don't know if I'd speak as excited as I am today, right? I think that's a big piece of it too. Survivorship bias, right? We made it, so quote unquote.
Yeah.
So it's easier for me to talk about it.
That makes a lot of sense. So can you talk a little bit about how you made it so successful?
I mean, outside of the answer that most people don't like to hear, like I work so freaking much. It's not even funny. That is a piece that I always like to throw out there, because I'm not the podcast guy who says everybody should have a podcast and it's going to be great. Mm-hmm. It's awesome. It's wonderful, but it's a challenge. Mm-hmm. In the very beginning, I was so broke. So, I mean, I moved in with my best friend. Rent was $500 a month. He was chasing real estate investments. I was chasing this podcast thing. So there was like a lot of, what's the word I'm looking for?
Drive, hunger.
all of that. And just like a connection, like a deep connection around purpose. Uh-huh. So I was living with him. At the time, I was accruing debt pretty quickly. So I was like $30,000 in credit card debt. Mm-hmm. That was terrible. I was as single as a human can be. Just not a ounce of prospect for love for me. But I remember I felt super fulfilled in the very beginning. So there was something to that for me. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it started with us learning as much as we could about the stuff that we were talking about. It started with us doing a lot of weird stuff, like traveling across the country on credit cards to interview people or to go to seminars to learn more about the stuff that we were trying to teach. And I think, honestly, we were just way more committed than the average person. Mm-hmm. I mean, my business partner left a $200,000 a year career. Mm-hmm. I left a 6-figure income. We both had our own wake-up moments. So the commitment was just far and above almost anything else I've ever seen from somebody I've worked with. There was no opportunity. There was no option to lose. Like, we had to do this. This was a calling. So yeah, we would interview. We'd send a bunch of emails to people to try to interview big guests. We started with 1 episode a week, and then we went to 2, and then we went to 3, and then we went to 4, and then we hired a team because we started making money through coaching, and then we went to 5 episodes and 6. Now we do 7. It really was. We worked on ourselves a lot because I think we understood that the podcast and the business and the impact and the influence can never grow beyond what we grow into. That was really big. And then, like, from the tactical stuff, it's just, we are very consistent. It's like super sickeningly consistent. And when you don't want a way out, you find a way to stay. Right. Like, this is, I said this in front of the scenes, behind the scenes, I don't know. This is literally my dream come true. Yeah. Literally. So when I left my job, it was, I'm going to succeed at this or I'm going to die trying. I'm never going to get another job. I refuse to. I'm not interested. I will be as broke as it takes. I need to do this. Like, I'm so privileged to be able to chase my dreams. And I'm even more privileged to be able to do it every day. So yeah, it's an obsession. I think that's probably the best way to put it is it became an obsession, and it was the number one priority in my life. It is the number one priority in my life. It's not the number one person. It is the number one priority, though.
Can you say why you're doing it? Because I feel like that's also a key part of being successful, because I think some people probably go into this with the idea of, oh, I'm going to have notoriety or that sort of thing, right? Like, oh, I'm going to be a famous there's and what? It's like, but why? Like, why are you doing this? I mean, do you know what I'm talking about? Where there's these people that just, they're doing it for all the wrong reasons. And I think if you're doing it for the wrong reasons, it's going to be really hard, really hard.
Yeah, I want to be the person that I needed at my lowest point. I mean, that's, there's no question you could ask that I wouldn't try to answer, regardless of how deep it is. If I'm scared to answer it, I would do my best to answer it, because that's the type of person that I needed. That's what they would do. Yeah. That is why I do so many of the things I do. That's why our pricing is what our pricing is. That's why we do an episode every day. Like, so many of not only the way I try to show up as a human, and again, I am far from perfect, so I have bad days routinely. So much of the energy that I try to bring, that's what the type of person that I would look up to would do. And then just behind the scenes, so much of the way that we run the business is based on that. It's like, I want to be a good person. If I have to be a terrible person to win in business, I'm in the wrong business. And I refuse to do that. There's enough of that already. There's enough. Yeah, there's enough and more. I just want to be a good man. I just want to be a good man, because I was always searching for good men in my life, and I always tended to come up empty. So I want to be someone I'm proud of.
Yeah. I mean, I saw that in you, and that's also where I'm at. Same thing where it's like I have hurt so much in my life, and I'm not saying I have figured out all the ways to, overcome everything, but I have figured out a lot. But I also know to bring on all these different guests, just as you do, right? That have overcome other challenges and they have figured it out and they can share those things. And there's a lot of people doing this for the wrong reason. And I don't,
Yeah.
it's kind of scary, but I can tell you're a genuine person, and I appreciate that. Yeah.
Likewise. I think that is a wonderful question. We go back to why. Why are you doing? Being honest about the why, I think, is one of the most valuable things you can do, because if somebody comes to me and says, I want to lose 15 pounds, why? I feel like I could be healthier. Is that the realist why? What is the realist why? Because if you say, honestly, I want to look good on the beach. Awesome. Good for you. Who am I to tell you that's a dumb reason? I want to look good on the beach too.
Yeah.
If we tap into the real why, we tap into the real inspiration, we tap into the real motivation, the real necessity, the real accountability. I think why is one of the best questions ever of all time.
No, absolutely. I mean, that's something that I talk about too, is just why. That's how I got where I am, is just started asking why. That's how I'm alive. I got the pacemaker at 21, and then it was just one thing after another. I was like, why? And the pacemaker at 21, I think, is really what got my brain going. You got to ask why. This is not normal. Like, it's not every day you see a 21-year-old getting a pacemaker. And so that's where I was like, all right, let me start asking why. Why is this happening? Why is my body responding this way? Why is it not working? Why? Why? Because I knew it wasn't normal. And that goes for everything in life, right? If you're putting on too much weight or all the different things, or if you're depressed, is why? What is happening? Like, why is that happening? Why do I feel that way? You got to ask those why questions, and then you can kind of get to the bottom of things.
Why is the question. There's the 7 whys. I don't know what book it's from, but if you ask why 7 times, is it always going to work this way? No. But eventually you get to the root cause of what it is. Yeah. That's something my business partner and I have done 1,000 times behind the scenes when we're struggling with something.
Yeah. Okay. So to wrap this up, I want you to share quickly, what can people do if they decide, I want to get into podcasting?
Ooh.
If that's my dream. They're like, it's my dream. First, let's say first they should ask themselves why they're doing it, to make sure they're doing it.
You beat me to it, Andrea. That was going to be my first answer. Yeah. Ask yourself why. I would say we should really evaluate where you are in terms of perfectionism, because the thing I recommend all the time is messy action. So the barrier to entry is extremely low for starting a podcast. It's not hard. It's starting a podcast is easy as heck. You click some buttons, you pay for artwork, and somebody helps you with an intro and outro. You don't need a mic anymore. You can start without one. So I would say, let's get very familiar on the why. Let's get very familiar on the audience that you intend to serve. Mm-hmm. Let's get extremely certain on what are the problems that you want to solve. Mm-hmm. Those are the things that hold people back, I think, more than almost anything else. You can search the technical stuff. That's not, you can Google that. You can't Google what's the why underneath the reason I started a podcast in the first place. So I would start there. And then I would give this understanding that, I don't know, most people just don't share. If you want to make money with a podcast, you're going to make it in different ways than the biggest podcasts in the world are making their money, most likely. Mm-hmm. Like we're a big podcast, quote unquote. We don't do sponsorships. We don't do ads. We don't do affiliates. That's not how we do it. And I don't think that's how most podcasts are going to do it. So I would say really go in with the understanding that this is a business if you want it to be, but relying purely on luck it's not going to work that way. Mm-hmm. We have to have some strategy, and we have to have some intention, and you have to find a way to solve people's problems at a deeper level. And that's how you're going to end up monetizing your podcast. And then don't pay anybody that reaches out to you and says they can help you promote your podcast, because that most likely isn't real. Outside of that, just try to be as consistent as you can be. Consistency is no longer a strategy, it is a necessity. Mm-hmm. It's not enough just to be consistent, because everybody's consistent now. Mm-hmm. But that's where we got to start. We got to start from a place that's sustainable. Then we have to practice sustainability consistently, and then we can improve as we go. Mm-hmm. And I would commit to 2 years. Say, I'm going to do an episode every week for 2 years, because that's a good amount of commitment.
And content.
And content and relationships and connections. And you're going to learn and grow so much over 2 years. So yeah, I would start with all that. In terms of like the technical stuff, honestly, I don't think a lot of that matters as much as people think. Like what camera you use, eventually, what mic you use. Yeah, I mean, there's cheap mics out there, but just get started. You can't improve a plane that isn't flying. You just need to fly the plane and you can figure out what's wrong with it. I think podcasting is pretty similar, and the downside is far lower. It's not going to crash and burn. You know, nobody's going to listen in the beginning anyway, so it's not like you're going to get a lot of hate mail.
I mean, that's true though. That is the nice thing about podcasting, the overhead, the cost of getting going. It's not that much. So like, if you're interested, just throw it out there, see what happens. I mean, I was not ready to start mine and I just recorded episode 1, just threw it together because I just didn't care. I'm like, this isn't about me, but it was just about me. But I just wanted to get going. I'm like, I just need to throw something up there to get going. And so I just did it. And yeah, it's been messy and and even sometimes now it's messy, but
always. I messed up today. I've done 3,000 podcast episodes. I make a mistake every time. Every single time there's something that's going to go wrong, but I have so many lessons now that I would never have had if I didn't start. And I can't speak enough. Messy action. That is like one of our philosophies that we talk about all the time. Take messy action. You're going to get better results than if you didn't take the action in the first place.
That's definitely, I think, what got me going was finally saying, you know what, screw it. I don't care. Like, I just have to go because otherwise I'm doing nothing. So I definitely
I'm glad you started.
Definitely did the messy action. Okay. So how do you get paid then? I know people will ask that though, because you're saying, oh, we don't do ads. You don't do sponsorships. Is that what you're saying? A lot of people are like, I need to be paid. Some people, well, not everybody has to be paid, right? But some people do.
Everything for us is coaching.
Okay. So that's what I thought. Okay.
Yeah. In the beginning, I went to my business partner and I said, dude, at this point, I was really riding the struggle bus financially. And I said, I need to start making money with this. I mean, I'm editing all of our audio. I'm editing our video. I'm doing social media. He's doing a bunch of stuff. Like, we are in it. And he said, you know what? I think you should start coaching for free. And I said, brother, I need to start making money. And he said, well, you've never done mindset peak performance coaching. Yeah. You need to build some confidence under your coaching abilities and you need to figure out how you coach. And the best way to do that is to give it away. It's like, all right, that's fair. So I reached out to 5 people that I knew in the community. I said, hey, I'm interested in doing some beta testing for coaching. It's totally free. I'll coach you for 8 weeks. No strings attached. Is that something you'd be interested in? And everybody said yes. I was like, whoa, interesting. Okay. Coached everybody for 8 weeks. And at the end, I said, okay, I can't do this anymore for free. You don't have to sign up if you don't want, but if you do want to continue going, it's going to be $50 a call. And everybody said yes. I was like, whoa. So I went from making $0 to $250 a week. And that was the beginning. That was the beginning for us. And then, that evolved into group coaching. And then we were like 500 episodes in, people started asking me for podcast advice. So then I started working with podcasters. So yeah, every single dollar we've made has been made from adding value into somebody's life at a deeper level. I mean, that's how we've done it. I guess we've kind of become a coaching business beneath the podcast. But that works really well if you're a problem solver. Yeah. I have clients that are contractors. I have clients that are personal trainers, physical therapists, doctors, right? That if you solve a problem for somebody, they're going to reach out sometimes to see if you can help them solve the problem at a deeper level, a more specific problem at a deeper level. So, yeah. Yeah.
Now, I love that you said all that because I have even been told myself, no, don't give anything away for free. Like you have to charge. And then I feel like with social media, that's something we see a lot. People saying you got to charge and you have to charge like so much more that it's just like astronomical amounts. And it's like, well, no, like if nobody's biting at all, like you can't just jump to charging $1,000 an hour or whatever. Oh my gosh.
That's something we see, Andrea. I was working with somebody recently and they said, you don't charge enough. I said, all right, how much do you charge? They said, I charge $5,000 for a coaching package. Cool. How many clients do you have? Oh, I've never had a client. Okay. Don't tell me what to charge. What do we do? So you just woke up one day and decided 5,000 was the number?
Yeah.
That's what you just decided? That's what you're worth? No, that's not the way it works.
Yeah.
There's so much of that out there. I think the one thing, this is advice I'd give to anybody, podcasting, business, whatever, in life really, when you get entitled, you will lose it all. And I think that's an entitled thing to do, is just wake up and say, you know what? I think I want to charge $10,000. You charge a price in direct correlation to the problem that you solve. And if you're trying to help people make money, you solve the problem in a way where they're going to get a return on how much they're spending. So you can charge $5,000 to somebody who's going to make $50,000 from that, for sure. But that's not, most people are lying. Yeah. And most people are paying for followers, and they're not most, many are paying for followers, and they're paying for likes, and they don't have clients. So they're just telling you what to do. I've worked with so many coaches who have a podcast about coaching, but don't have any clients. And it's not because they just started. I mean, this has like been their thing. And it's like, oh my God, this isn't real. I can't work with you. This isn't real. So rant over.
This isn't real. Well, thank you. Thank you for being on. And where can people find you if they want to connect and find you?
Yeah. So the podcast is Next Level University. We do an episode every day. So you'll either fall in love with us or hate us quickly. Hopefully it's the first one. My handle on Instagram is Never Quit Kid. And then my email is kevin@nextleveluniverse.com. Questions, comments, concerns, podcasting, please shoot me an email. I will answer all of your stuff. I'm not going to charge you. I just want to add value. Genuinely.
You won't charge them until the 5th question.
Yeah, you get 4 free.
4 free. I'm just kidding. Thank you so much.